Back when bonfires cracked, sparklers fizzed, and the air smelled of smoke and sugar, bonfire night meant homemade toffee and treacle-stained smiles. Most of those treats have vanished, but the memories still glow. Here are 25 bonfire night favorites you'll remember, if your teeth survived them. Hard as coal and sweet as sin, treacle toffee was bonfire night's most dangerous delight. Made from little more than black treacle, sugar, and butter, it was boiled to the brink of combustion, its surface bubbling like molten lava. Nans stood watch over the pan, armed with wooden spoons and nerves of steel, judging the hard crack stage by eye alone. Once poured into tins, the toffee cooled into a glossy jet-black sheet, ready to be smashed with a hammer. The shards were jagged, smoky, and sharp enough to test both your teeth and your courage. Wrapped in wax paper, it was passed out to kids who crunched it with pride, knowing full well they might regret it later. It was more than a sweet. It was a badge of bonfire night honor, a brittle taste of danger that lingered long after the fireworks faded. Yorkshire's gift to bonfire night, Parkin was a sticky, spicy monument to northern thrift and patience. Made with oatmeal, treacle, and golden syrup, it was baked days before the 5th of November and hidden away to mature. Over time, it grew darker, moister, and chewier, the kind of cake that clung to your fingers and your memory. Every family had their own recipe, fiercely guarded and endlessly debated. More ginger for heat, extra syrup for shine, or a pinch of cloves because Mum always did. When sliced beside the bonfire, its scent of treacle and smoke mingled perfectly with the night air. Served with a mug of strong tea or a spoonful of custard, it warmed you from the inside out. Parkin wasn't showy, but it was honest. A true taste of the North, as comforting as a wool jumper and twice as enduring. Bright red and deceptively innocent, toffee apples were the glittering stars of bonfire night, equal parts treat and trap. Made by dipping sharp green apples into molten sugar syrup, they gleamed like jewels under the firelight, promising sweetness and delivering a dental workout. The first bite cracked like breaking glass. A shiver of cold air and sugar rush in one. Beneath the glossy shell, the apple's tartness cut through the caramel's burn, leaving your cheeks sticky and your fingers welded together. Kids clutched them in mittened hands, faces illuminated by sparks and fireworks, while parents secretly hoped for leftovers. Half were dropped in the mud before they were finished, but no bonfire night was complete without one. It wasn't just a sweet, it was a symbol, a sugary beacon glowing against the dark November sky. If treacle toffee was mischief, bonfire toffee was pure defiance. Poured thick and black into old baking tins, it cooled into slabs so solid they could double as roof tiles. The recipe was simple: sugar, butter, and black treacle, but getting it right took skill and nerve. Leave it too long, and it burned bitter. Too short, and it stayed soft. Every Nan claimed her batch could crack a window, and many probably did. Once set, it was chipped into shards with knives and hammers, filling the kitchen with the sound of cracking sugar. Each piece carried that unmistakable bittersweet edge, smoky, dark, and slightly dangerous. Wrapped in greaseproof paper or newspaper, it was handed round the fire like treasure. It wasn't just a sweet, it was bonfire night itself in edible form, bold, black, and proud of it. Homemade fudge wasn't just a sweet, it was a ritual. Butter, sugar, and condensed milk bubbled slowly on the stove as Nans stirred, tested, and prayed it wouldn't seize. The smell of caramel drifted through the house, rich and comforting, as the mixture thickened and turned golden. Timing was everything. Pour too early, and it stayed soft. Too late, and it became rock hard. When it finally set, it was cut into uneven squares, each one slightly different, but all equally delicious. Grainy or smooth, crumbly or creamy, it didn't matter. It was the taste of patience rewarded. On bonfire night, wrapped in foil or wax paper, it melted on the tongue, while fireworks cracked overhead. Fudge was the sweet that proved simple things, made slowly and shared generously, could bring the most joy. Bonfire treacle sponge was warmth in pudding form, rich, dark, and comforting. Made with golden syrup or black treacle, it emerged from the oven sticky and steaming, its surface glistening like caramel glass. Served with custard so thick it moved in slow motion, it was the perfect antidote to the cold November air. Every spoonful was heavy with sweetness, the kind that coated your throat and soothed the chill from your bones. Families gathered around enamel dishes, steam clouding the windows as the last fireworks popped outside. It wasn't a fancy pudding. No cream, no garnish, no fuss. Just warmth, nostalgia, and enough sugar to keep you smiling through the frost. For many, bonfire night didn't officially begin until the first spoon cracked into that treacle slick sponge. The humblest bonfire night treat, yet perhaps the most perfect. Potatoes, tossed straight into the glowing embers, cooked beneath the fire's roar until their skins turned black and blistered. When pulled out with tongs or sticks, they were rolled in newspaper to cool, then cracked open to reveal soft, smoky flesh that steamed in the cold. A pat of butter and a pinch of salt turned it into pure comfort, cheap, simple, and unforgettable. There was always a bit of ash, a bit of crunch, and always the taste of wood smoke. Kids didn't care about presentation. They cared about the warmth in their hands and the smell of fire on their clothes. In a night full of sweets, the baked potato was earthy, grounding, and real. A reminder that the best food sometimes comes straight from the flame. Sausage rolls were the unsung heroes of bonfire night, part snack, part survival strategy. Pulled fresh from the oven or grabbed from a paper bag, they offered greasy comfort against the cold. The smell of flaky pastry and seasoned meat mingled with the tang of bonfire smoke, creating an aroma that felt like home. Kids devoured them in 2 bites. Adults clutched them like portable radiators. The pastry cracked, crumbs flew, and no one cared. Homemade ones, brushed with egg and baked to golden perfection, were treasured. But even a Greg's version eaten on a damp field tasted like heaven. They weren't glamorous, but they were dependable. Hot, hearty, and gone long before the last sparkler fizzled out. The unplanned legend of bonfire night, toffee bananas were pure, sticky improvisation. Someone always had leftover syrup or treacle, and someone else a bunch of overripe bananas. And together they made magic. The fruit was dipped, rolled, and balanced precariously on sticks, then cooled into glossy sweetness that clung to your fingers. The heat caramelized the edges, giving that perfect mix of chew and crunch. They were unpredictable, sometimes glorious, sometimes a disaster, but always memorable. Kids burned their tongues, dropped them in the grass, and went back for more. The combination of warm banana and molten sugar tasted like rebellion, like something too good to have been planned. The simplest sweet, and somehow the most fun. Apple dabs were slices of crisp green apple dipped into tangy sherbet powder, creating an explosion of fizz, sourness, and laughter. They were sold in paper bags at fairs, or made at home with a tin of sherbet and a bit of mischief. The cold fruit made the sherbet crackle on your tongue, and every bite was a balance of tart and sweet, that made faces scrunch and kids squeal. There was nothing polished about it. Sticky fingers, sherbet dust on sleeves, apple cores in pockets. But that was the charm. Apple dabs weren't about elegance. They were about pure, fizzy joy. Cheap, quick, and unforgettable, they captured the spirit of the night. A little chaos, a lot of sweetness, and laughter shared in the cold glow of the bonfire. Heavier, darker, and spicier than their Christmas cousins, bonfire night gingerbread men were. The taste of warmth and mischief. Homemade versions filled the kitchen with the smell of treacle and ginger as the night sky erupted with fireworks. Their arms sometimes broke in the tin, their icing faces slid, and their edges were a little too dark. But none of that mattered. Corner shops and school fairs sold their own, often rock hard by the time you got to them, yet softened perfectly by the heat of the bonfire. Each bite carried the taste of spice, smoke, and sugar, clinging to your gloves and memory alike. Eaten with numb fingers and sticky smiles, these misshapen men weren't just treats. They were edible tradition. Every gingerbread man, cracked and imperfect, told the same story of laughter, cold air, and the sweet, smoky joy that defined bonfire night. Bonfire night muffins were treacle-scented little miracles, baked for one night only. Simple in recipe, just flour, syrup, and ginger. And brown sugar, but somehow tasting like something much grander. Their tops burned slightly in the oven, giving each one a faint hint of smoke that matched the air outside. Nans baked them in paper cases days before, wrapped them in grease-proof paper, and handed them out with mugs of steaming tea or cocoa. They were dense, sweet, and gloriously sticky, warming your insides as the cold crept through your coat. Eaten beside the fire, with sparks lighting up the sky, they carried the unmistakable taste of treacle and home. There were no decorations, no icing, no fuss, just honest, comforting flavor. Each muffin felt like a small celebration in itself, dark, rich, and full of that sweet November magic that only ever came once a year. A rite of passage for every child, toasting marshmallows on sticks was the most joyful chaos of bonfire night. Kids scavenged for twigs, wiped off the mud, and jabbed pink or white marshmallows onto the ends. Holding them over the flames took courage and a little recklessness. Too close, and they burst into fireballs. Too far, and they stayed cold and stubborn. The perfect ones came out blistered, half-burnt, gooey at the core, a sweet reward for patience or luck. Even when they fell into the ashes, they were blown off, re-skewered, and eaten anyway. Each bite mixed sugar, smoke, and the faint taste of adventure. It wasn't about perfection. It was about togetherness, laughter, and sticky fingers in the flicker of the firelight. No supermarket bag or microwave version could ever match the magic of a half-burnt marshmallow eaten under the November sky. Black peas were the soul food of northern bonfire nights, savory, steamy, and surprisingly comforting. These tiny maple peas were soaked, boiled, and simmered until tender, then served in paper cups with salt and vinegar. The smell was unmistakable, earthy, tangy, and warm against the cold November air. For Lancashire families, no bonfire was complete without them. They weren't fancy, but they filled you up, thawed frozen fingers, and offered a break from the endless parade of sweets. Outsiders might have raised an eyebrow, but locals knew the truth. Black peas were tradition, a taste of home passed down through generations. The vinegar steam hit your nose as you took a bite, the flavor deep and peppery, grounding you in the moment. In a night of sugar and spectacle, black peas were the quiet comfort, humble, honest, and perfect. Sticky, sweet, and slightly chaotic, toffee popcorn balls were Bonfire Night's answer to the candy apple. Made from freshly popped corn mixed with golden syrup or caramel, they were rolled into clusters that barely held together, part treat, part glue. Mothers made them by hand, often wrapping them in paper or cling film before the syrup had even cooled. Kids unwrapped them with eager, sticky fingers, bits of popcorn clinging to mittens as the fireworks burst overhead. Biting into one was pure satisfaction, crunch, sweetness, and the faint smell of smoke from the nearby fire. They were imperfect, messy, and utterly addictive. The kind of homemade magic that supermarkets never captured. Every piece stuck in your teeth, every bite was worth it, and the taste lingered long after the sparks faded. The crisp cousin of Yorkshire's Parkin cake, these biscuits carried all the warmth of the north in every bite. Made with oats, treacle, and a generous dose of ginger, they were chewy in the middle, crisp at the edge, and perfect for dunking into tea after standing in the cold. Nans baked batches in advance, storing them in tins that seemed bottomless. Their deep flavor, spicy, sweet, and faintly smoky, matched the night's mood perfectly. Eaten indoors as you thawed out, or passed around the bonfire wrapped in napkins, Parkin biscuits were both treat and comfort. They snapped just right, melted in your mouth, and left that gingery hum that lingered like wood smoke. There was nothing fancy about them, but that was their magic. Simple, hearty, and proud, Parkin biscuits tasted like home, warmth, and the unshakable northern spirit that kept Bonfire Night alive. Bright, brittle, and endlessly nostalgic, rhubarb and custard sweets were the pocket treasure of every Bonfire Night. Sold by the quarter at corner shops, they rattled in paper bags tucked into mittened hands. Half-sharp rhubarb, half-creamy custard, they struck the perfect balance between tang and comfort. Their colors glowed under streetlights, yellow and pink jewels that seemed almost too pretty to eat. But once you did, the sugar glued your teeth together, and the flavor filled your whole mouth with memories. Kids swapped them like currency, trading one for a turn with a sparkler or a go at lighting a firework. The taste, sour, sweet, and utterly British, matched the night itself. A mix of bite and warmth, laughter and smoke. They weren't just sweets. They were tiny, crackling reminders of childhood, fizzing with the same energy as the fireworks above. Few things summed up working-class Bonfire Night better than a slice of treacle bread. There was no recipe to follow, no weighing or fuss. Just whatever bread you had, and a tin of treacle or golden syrup waiting in the cupboard. Thick slices were cut from a loaf, sometimes toasted briefly over the fire, then spread until the syrup glistened and began to run. It soaked through the crumb, dripping onto fingers and coats as the cold November air bit at your cheeks. It was the kind of food that tasted of resourcefulness and warmth, quick, cheap fuel for kids running about with sparklers and adults keeping watch on the fire. Some families swore by golden syrup for sweetness, others insisted on black treacle for bite. Either way, it was sticky, smoky, and satisfying. No frills, no pretense, just real Bonfire Night comfort eaten with one hand while the other held a sparkler. Pretty, pink, and unmistakably homemade, coconut ice was the sort of sweet that appeared on every school fair table and kitchen counter come Bonfire Night. It required just coconut, sugar, and condensed milk, pressed firmly into trays by mothers and nans who hoped it would set before the festivities began. Cut into uneven cubes and wrapped in cling film, it was sweet enough to make your teeth ache and your heart happy. Long before store-bought treats took over, it was the homemade heart of Bonfire Night sweetness. Candy cigarettes were pure mischief, wrapped in nostalgia. Sold in cardboard packets that mimicked real brands, they made every child feel daringly adult for one smoky night. The sweets themselves were simple, chalky white sugar sticks with a faint vanilla flavor. But it wasn't about the taste. It was about the play acting. Kids strutted around the fire, puffing dramatically while holding sparklers in the other hand, copying the grown-ups they saw every day. Parents laughed, pretending not to notice, and everyone shared in the harmless fun. The boxes, often crushed and sticky by the end of the night, were trophies of sorts, proof you'd been part of something exciting. Today they'd raise eyebrows, but back then they were part of the thrill, a tiny rebellion, wrapped in sugar. The top half, tinted pink, looked festive under the glow of sparklers, while the white layer stayed soft and crumbly. Kids would trade them, nibble the corners or hoard them until the fireworks started. Each bite left fingers sticky and faces smiling. Coconut ice was never perfect, never professional, and that was its charm. It tasted of warmth, effort, and love. Long before store-bought treats took over, it was the homemade heart of bonfire night sweetness. Candy cigarettes were pure mischief wrapped in nostalgia. Sold in cardboard packets that mimicked real brands, they made every child feel daringly adult for one smoky night. The sweets themselves were simple, chalky white sugar sticks with a faint vanilla flavor. But it wasn't about the taste. It was about the play acting. Kids strutted around the fire, puffing dramatically while holding sparklers in the other hand, copying the grown-ups they saw every day. Parents laughed, pretending not to notice, and everyone shared in the harmless fun. The boxes, often crushed and sticky by the end of the night, were trophies of sorts, proof you had been part of something exciting. Today they would raise eyebrows, but back then they were part of the thrill, a tiny rebellion wrapped in sugar. Candy cigarettes belonged to a different time, one of innocence, imitation, and that peculiar brand of childhood freedom that Bonfire Night seemed to encourage. There was nothing subtle about cola cubes, bright red, hard as rock, and bursting with fizzy sweetness that could outlast an entire fireworks display. You could buy a quarter from the corner shop for pennies, poured into a crinkly paper bag that rustled in your pocket all the way to the bonfire. The first taste was sharp and strong. The second glued your teeth together. Some kids sucked them carefully, others crunched them recklessly, daring each other to see who could finish first. They stained tongues crimson and left lips sticky with sugar dust. The scent of cola mingled perfectly with wood smoke, creating that unmistakable mix of autumn and excitement. Cola cubes weren't just sweets. They were the sound of laughter, the flash of fireworks, the thrill of staying up late. Cheap, cheerful, and unforgettable, they were the small, sparkling currency of November nights, traded between friends until the bag ran empty. The Treacle toffee apple was Bonfire Night's darker, bolder showstopper. Unlike the glossy red fairground kind, this version was born in home kitchens, where pans of sugar and treacle bubbled dangerously on the stove. The smell, deep, smoky, and a little burnt, clung to the curtains. For days, apples were speared on sticks and dipped carefully into the molten mixture, emerging black and shining like polished coal. It was risky work. One wrong move and you would lose both the apple and a bit of skin. But when they cooled, they were perfect. The sharp snap of treacle giving way to the crisp bite of apple beneath. Each mouthful balanced bitterness and sweetness, fire and fruit. Kids clutched them proudly, hands sticky and eyes wide with wonder. No shop-bought sweet has ever matched that flavor. Half danger, half delight, and every bit the taste of Bonfire Night tradition. When the night grew colder and the fireworks louder, nothing hit the spot like a steaming hot dog fresh off a makeshift grill. Whether from a scout stall or a neighbor's barbecue, the smell of sizzling sausages cut through the smoke and called everyone closer. The sausages were cheap, the bread rolls soft and a little squashed, but none of that mattered. You grabbed one with freezing hands, doused it in ketchup or mustard that inevitably ended up on your sleeve, and took a bite as sparks filled the sky. The steam fogged your glasses, your fingers thawed, and for a few perfect minutes, all was right with the world. No bonfire night feast was complete without it, salty, smoky, messy, and satisfying. It was food for the people, quick to make, impossible to eat neatly, and absolutely essential. Even now, the smell of grilled sausages carries the echo of laughter around the fire. Baked beans on toast was the warm heart of every scout bonfire, school fair, or chilly backyard gathering. Served from great steaming pots, it was ladled over thick slices of toast that sagged beneath the weight but held just long enough to eat. The orange sauce ran down your fingers as the smoke and fireworks filled the night, and nobody minded the mess. The combination of sweetness, salt, and warmth was perfect, fuel for frozen hands and hungry bellies. It tasted like care, like community, like Britain itself on a cold November night. For many, it was the only proper meal amid the sweets and sparks. You'd balance a paper plate in one hand, a fork in the other, and eat standing up by the fire, the beans still bubbling. Cheap, filling, and comforting, it was proof that the simplest food could feel like a hug against the cold. Every bonfire night ended with the toffee pull, part dessert, part chaos, and pure joy. A bubbling pan of golden treacle and sugar was poured onto a buttered tray, filling the kitchen with the smell of caramel and smoke. Then came the waiting game. Too soon, and it burned your fingers. Too late, and it turned to stone. When the moment was right, everyone, kids, parents, even grandparents, greased their hands and began to stretch the toffee into long, glossy ropes. Laughter filled the air as strands tangled, stuck, and snapped. Bits of sugar clung to sleeves and hair, and no one cared. The ritual ended with bowls of cooling toffee, broken into chunks and shared proudly. It wasn't neat, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was tradition, a sweet, messy finale to the night. Long after the last sparkler fizzled out, the taste of treacle lingered, along with the memory of laughter. If this brought back memories of sticky fingers and smoky skies, hit subscribe for more blasts from the past and tell us